In April 2003, the police in Wenzhou, Zhejiang Province, China, received continuous reports of missing persons. All the missing individuals shared a common trait. They were scrap collectors. In a short period, the entire city was gripped by fear. No one dared to handle the bottles and cans stored in their homes, let alone visit scrap collection points, fearing they might become the next kidnapping victim. On May 24th, 2003, in Liyang village, on the southern outskirts of Wenzhou at 2 p.m., 2 police officers were patrolling the area on their motorbikes as usual. There have been too many disappearances recently. Every few days someone reports another case, but the police station still has no leads, one officer lamented. "We need to patrol more carefully. We might find a clue," said the officer sitting behind him. When they reached Zhong'erji Road, both officers immediately became more alert. This area was known for its complex social makeup, with most residents being migrants rather than locals. These people primarily came from nearby provinces to work in factories or construction sites. Due to the region's underdeveloped economy and low rental costs, it attracted many tenants from other areas. However, the high population density and diverse mix of people often led to discord among neighbors. Even minor issues could escalate into disputes or fights, causing unnecessary injuries. To prevent conflicts, the local police frequently patrolled the area. As the 2 officers entered a deserted alley, they were suddenly blocked by an old black bicycle. "Whose bicycle is this? Move it aside. We can't get through," one officer shouted. Despite calling out several times, there was no response. With no other option, they got off their motorbikes and knocked on the nearest door. "Open up, it's the police." After a moment, the door opened slightly. The person who answered was a couple. The husband's name was Xiao Jiang. Seeing the uniformed officers, the couple couldn't hide their anxiety. Politely, they asked, "Officers, is something wrong?" "Is that bicycle outside yours?" The couple looked in the direction the officer pointed, frowning immediately and cursing, "That scrap collector again. He parked his bike right in front of our house." They quickly collected themselves and forced a smile. "Officers, that bicycle belongs to our neighbor. He often parks it across the alley. You see how narrow the alley is already? And then he parks his bike there. It's really inconvenient. But no matter how much we tell him, he still does whatever he wants." Noticing Xiao Jiang's flushed face, the police assumed the story might be true and asked, "What's your neighbor's name?" "His name is Chen Yongfeng." Guided by Xiao Jiang and his wife, the officers approached Chen Yongfeng's door. Before they could knock, they were overwhelmed by the deafening music blasting from inside. "He's such a strange man. Blasting music so loudly in broad daylight, it's unbelievable," Xiao Jiang muttered angrily. "Chen Yongfeng, this is the police. Your bike is blocking the alley. Please come out and move it." Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from inside, like something heavy had fallen, making everyone's hearts race. There was still no response. The police raised their voices. "Chen Yongfeng, are you in there?" Finally, a voice came from inside. "I'm busy. Give me a moment." The officers grew suspicious. Their instincts told them something was wrong. Exchanging glances, they silently agreed on a plan. One officer stayed to guard the house while the other quickly contacted the police station for reinforcements. Soon, Chen Yongfeng's house was completely surrounded. Due to the blaring music, Chen didn't hear the commotion outside and remained unaware that he was surrounded. What was even more unsettling was the faint smell of fresh blood in the air, a scent reminiscent of a slaughterhouse. The officers exchanged uneasy looks, their minds racing with grim possibilities, though they silently hoped for the best. Everyone held their breath, trying not to make any noise that might alarm Chen. The team leader signaled with a hand gesture, and the officers simultaneously forced the door open. The moment the door swung open, everyone was stunned. Some officers even vomited immediately. The room was drenched in blood. The windows, doors, walls, and ceiling were all splattered with it. On the floor lay a dismembered corpse, the arms and thighs missing, wounds jagged, blood still oozing. It was unmistakably the scene of a gruesome murder and dismemberment. But strangely, Chen Yongfeng was nowhere to be found. The officers repeatedly called his name. Suddenly, a dark figure burst out from the inner room. Holding a knife, he lunged as if to attack the officers. However, seeing the overwhelming number of police, he changed course and attempted to escape through the front door. As soon as he stepped out the door, the police immediately rushed in, quickly subdued him, and took him back to the station. Chen Yongfeng's house was immediately sealed off and regarded as the primary crime scene. The room was sparsely furnished, with bottles and cardboard boxes scattered everywhere, clearly indicating that the owner worked as a scrap metal collector. Beside the dismembered body, there were several large sacks scattered about. It was clear that Chen had intended to place the body parts in the sacks and dispose of them. But he hadn't anticipated encountering the patrolling officers, causing his plan to fall apart. At the interrogation room, Chen appeared extremely agitated, refusing to admit to the crime and refusing to answer any of the officers' questions. For the first few days, Chen kept his silence, and the police couldn't extract any information. However, after several days, his psychological defenses began to crumble and he finally confessed to his crimes. "Why did you kill him?" the police asked. "He owed me money." His simple reply sent a chill down the officers' spines. Typically, criminals who commit murder over minor conflicts don't usually go to the extreme of dismembering the body unless they harbor a deep hatred for the victim. It could also indicate that the perpetrator is antisocial, deriving pleasure from the act itself. Therefore, the police didn't believe Chen's explanation that the murder was just over a debt. Under the relentless pressure from the police, Chen finally admitted that the recent disappearances in the area were all linked to him. But why would an ordinary scrap metal collector like Chen take such a dark path? Through his confession, it was revealed that Chen Yongfeng was born in 1983 in the village of Huangdaikeng, Qingyang County, Leizhou City, Zhejiang Province. Huangdaikeng village was deep in the mountains, isolated with no proper roads. The village had only about 30 households, and the population was sparse, with houses scattered around. Chen's home was located halfway up a mountain, made of wood, and appeared old and dilapidated. Chen was the second child in his family, with an older brother. However, his brother worked far away and rarely came home, so the two brothers had little to no communication. According to Chen, he had always been introverted and isolated since childhood, preferring solitude over socializing. "I don't have any friends, not a single one. Others enjoy gathering and having fun, but I find that being alone is better." In addition to his odd personality, Chen's academic performance was also underwhelming. After finishing primary school, due to financial difficulties at home, his parents decided to pull him out of school and send him to the city to work. His first job was in cotton production, but he quickly grew bored and found it dull. After 4 years, he decided to quit and search for another path. Afterward, Chen wandered through places like Qingyang and Wenzhou, learning some basic skills such as electric welding and aluminum framing. However, he still felt directionless, unsure of what his future held. In 2003, with the intention of starting his own business, Chen went to Wenzhou. However, due to his lack of education, he was looked down upon wherever he went. To survive, he began collecting scrap metal. But the scrap metal market in Wenzhou had long been saturated, and there was no place for him to stand. He rented a house on the outskirts of the city. After paying for rent and food, he was left with very little. The landlord had a rather favorable impression of Chen. He was only 20, but looked like he was 30. He seemed rough, with dark skin, and you could tell he'd been through a lot of hardships. After learning about Chen's situation, the landlord sympathized with him and had no hesitation in renting him the house, without any prejudice. If Chen had been willing to work hard, making ends meet wouldn't have been an issue. but he developed a dark idea and eventually went down a path from which he could never return. On February 28th, 2003. As usual, Chen rode his tricycle to collect scrap metal. When passing by a kindergarten, he saw a colleague collecting 3 sterilization cabinets. Chen, who was skilled in repairs, thought to himself that if he fixed these sterilization cabinets and sold them, he could make a big profit. He immediately stopped his colleague and asked to buy them. However, when he heard the price, Chen's face immediately darkened. "Are you crazy trying to make money like this? Are you really trying to deceive a colleague?" His colleague sneered and turned to walk away. At that moment, a dark thought crossed Chen's mind. He knew that scrap metal collectors often carried all their valuables on them or on their vehicles. If he robbed them, wouldn't it be easy to get money? And so, Chen officially began his descent into an irreversible path. Chen's first victim was Mrs. Lin, an elderly woman in her 60s who had been collecting scrap metal for decades. After several days of watching and observing her, Chen had learned her daily routine. One day, Chen pretended that he wanted to sell some cardboard and tricked Mrs. Lin into coming to his house. When Mrs. Lin bent down to pick up the cardboard, he grabbed a large hammer and struck her hard on the back of the head, killing her instantly. Afterward, Chen searched Mrs. Lin's body. He searched everywhere, but only found 240 yuan, about $30. He looked at it with disdain, complaining that it was too little. To dispose of the body, he thought for a long time, and then decided to dismember the victim into small pieces and dispose of them in a nearby ditch. Since Mrs. Lin had no children or relatives, no one cared whether she had gone missing. Therefore, Chen managed to escape the police's punishment. The first murder was followed by the second. Within a week, the money he had stolen was all spent. So he began looking for his next target. After killing Mrs. Lin, I became bolder. I realized that making money this way was easy. Killing someone could earn me as much money as I would get from collecting scrap metal for an entire month. Besides, once I dismembered the victim, no one could tell who they were anymore. Thus, he began to kill recklessly, constantly tricking victims into coming to his house with various excuses, then robbing and killing them, dismembering the bodies and disposing of them. By April 5th, 2003, Chen had committed 4 murders. The reason was simple: he didn't have enough money to pay his rent. By the 6th murder, he had become so familiar with the process that he even built a special table for dismembering victims, complete with all the necessary tools. Every time he dismembered a body, he would deliberately play music to cover the sound of the chopping. From February 28th to May 24th, 2003, in less than 3 months, Chen Yongfeng had murdered and dismembered 10 people, stealing their belongings, totaling 10,000 yuan, about $1,200. His crime rate was shockingly high. If the police had not intervened in time, many more people would have fallen victim to his knife. After the truth of his serial killings was revealed, the public was outraged and demanded that Chen Yongfeng be severely punished, calling for his execution. Upon investigation, it was found that Chen had no mental illness. Finally, the court sentenced him to death for robbery and intentional murder. On April 7th, 2004, Chen Yongfeng was executed. At the end of his life, he showed no remorse and even laughed maniacally. Clearly, from the moment he picked up the knife, his mind had become completely twisted. For money, he resorted to any means, treating human lives as worthless, with no empathy whatsoever. In the end, he could only bring upon himself the consequences of his actions, ending his short life at the age of 21. What do you think about today's case? Please leave your comments below so we can discuss it together. Don't forget to support us with a like and subscribe to the channel to motivate our team to bring more dramatic cases. And that concludes today's case. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching. Goodbye, and see you next time.